Well, hello, friends, neighbors. Welcome to my deck. I'm John, the Whiskey Neighbor. It's another gorgeous Saturday, and we're going to talk about a bourbon, an unusual bourbon. And in fact, this probably kicks off sort of a mini-series where I've got a number of open bottles that are not traditionally presented or are traditionally finished. So this first one will be about Legent. Legent comes from the Jim Beam Suntory mashup. I'll talk about the history as I know it when we come back, but this will be my thoughts. We'll nose it, we'll taste it, we'll talk whiskey about Legent. 3, 4. Thanks for staying with me. I always feel like I fumble those intros, but I think you should have a good idea that we're going to talk a bit about this unique bourbon that came out of Beam Suntory. It came out, I think, about a year ago, so it's been out for a while. If you're a whiskey person, I know that you've read about it. I'm sure you've seen some other people's tastings on it. But, this represents a team up or a partnership of two really great whiskey people. It's Fred No, master distiller at Jim Beam. And on the other side of the bottle, you'll see it's Shinji Fukuyo. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced Fukuyo's name. He's the chief blender at Suntory in Japan, right? So that's Japanese whiskey. And what's behind this, what I understand, is actually Fred No and Fukuyo, they actually were at this for quite a while, trying different samples of Jim Beam bourbon releases, and then trying different finishes, and eventually decided upon this blend. As I understand it, this is only bourbon. It's only Kentucky bourbon from Jim Beam, but part of it has been aged in ex-California wine barrels, and part of it has been aged in ex-sherry barrels. And so then, so they had some bourbon that's been aged, in ex-wine, some bourbon that's been aged in ex-sherry, and then bourbon just aged in the traditional new charred American oak. My understanding is probably only around 5 years, that the finishing in California wine was maybe a year. The ex-sherry could have been up to 2 years. And then, Shinji Fukuyo blended it. He's the final blender, as I understand it, behind this. So it would be more that Fred No was responsible for distilling and choosing the barrels, I think. And then Shinji Fukuyo really did a lot of the art of blending. And what's in here then is that partnership. It's released at 47%. It doesn't carry an age stamp, but I said I think it's somewhere around that 5-year mark. That's mostly what I've read. I wish I knew more, but I don't. Good looking bottle, nice top, and certainly some names in whiskey that we should all respect. Let's see what the liquid tells us. Nose is fairly sweet. I think you would get some dark fruits, some red fruits. I get a little bit of spicing on the nose, just a light cinnamon. Takes me back though into deeper fruits, into a sweetness, maybe some cherries or some berries. I think it's a nice nose, a sweeter nose, but still bourbon, but sweeter. See what the palate's like. Cheers. This palate really changes. When you first bring it in, I think you're going to go, oh, Jim Beam bourbon. We've got some caramel, some really cooked down sugars, some not burnt, but really, really cooked caramel, and hinting into that, peanut brittle, classic Jim Beam. But if you hold it in your mouth long, like a long sip like that, or you swallow and then early part of the finish, more of the wine finish comes back and really starts to play in there. Some fruit, some berry, jam, with a real balance back and forth between cooked caramel, peanut brittle, and jam and some fruits. The finish I find fairly drying. I find it cleans up in the mouth. It doesn't hug deep down the throat. Stays pretty much in the back of my mouth, but really gets into that sherried finish again, like the sweet fruit, dry, and more oak starts to come out in the finish. It's a very interesting whiskey. This is an interesting whiskey. And I have, just from reading and over the years, just utmost respect for these two gentlemen in whiskey, both in Japanese and in American Kentucky bourbon. I really like a lot of Jim Beam products, and there's a core Jim Beam flavor profile that is present here. It is uniquely presented with the wine and sherry playing into a sweetness a dimension of sweetness that I don't think you normally get in bourbon. Like normally, even when you, like, there can be sweet, I get into the more, sweet creamy corn or even sweet cherry, like it can go into maraschino cherry. This takes it into a deep, grape, maybe not grape, but a plum fig, kind of a dark fruit is present. You get a sweeter berry on the nose, and a definite sherry finish for me on the end of it. In the middle, it's Jim Beam, and I think you'll get the other notes that you get in a good quality Jim Beam product. I came to this bottle late. I know it's been out for a while. It took me a little while to get it, the price that I wanted to pay. I'm glad that I have it. I think it represents an interesting team, I'm curious about whiskey, and I appreciate different whiskeys. If you're pretty true to a tighter range of bourbon, you might appreciate a little more rye spice, or sometimes you like a little more buttery finish, or sometimes you like a little more strength, but you really just stay within a fairly tight bourbon profile. This might be too far off your comfort zone, and the fruits really might put you off. Still, I think you should try it. If you're a Scotch or like just Japanese whiskey has been your go-to, especially malt whiskey, and you come to this thinking it's going to be more of that, I think it will take you a while to get there. In my opinion, it's closer to good bourbon than it is a good Japanese malt whiskey, just in general. I like this. I think I like it more than most reviewers, and I'm happy to give it 4 stars. Thanks for joining me. I've kind of mumbled my way through out here, but it's a beautiful day. I hope I can get to some of the other kind of unusually finished whiskeys I have on my shelf yet this weekend. You guys have a great day.